Welcome to the 2022 Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, our 35th anniversary, presented by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. You're about to learn from some of the top saltwater anglers in the country. Now, the key to getting the most from the seminar series is to listen to the little subtleties, the adjustments that we are doing when the fishing is tough. This is what we like to refer to as the golden nuggets of the seminar series. We're about ready to get underway, so let's get right down to it.
Coming to you from the IGFA in South Florida, it's the 35th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Now, here's George Poveromo.
Welcome to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, edition 2022, presented by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats and filmed on location at the International Game Fish Association. A very intriguing panel dealing with successful light tackle fishing, basically hooking, landing, and releasing fish. We have Captain Jim Willcox from Isla Mirada in the Florida Keys backcountry, running out of Bud and Mary's. We have Captain Mike Goodwine out of the Tampa Bay area. And originally out of Miami, now living in Palm Beach, this is Captain Dan Kipnis, who had started the Reward drift fishing boats out of Miami. He's an ardent bottom fishing authority, among other major accomplishments. So this successful light tackle fishing, I want to shop this around with you gentlemen here, and I use that term gentlemen very loosely with this panel.
I would too, definitely.
So, hooking, fighting, landing,
Especially
releasing.
talking about him, but that's okay.
He was saying the same about you. Yeah. All right, light tackle fishing. You hear so much now in this world of performance fishing, I call it, where the buzzwords, people have to have it. Fluorocarbon leaders, braid line, that's what you hear, where traditional monofilament leader systems have taken a backseat as fishing lines in some applications. Let me go with you, Jim. Do you find any rhyme or reason what's better between mono or fluorocarbon?
I was anti-fluoro for years just because it was so expensive. But fishing bonefish in clear water, I'll go down to 20-pound fluoro. And also for like the bigger snook, like 40-pound fluoro is a lot tougher than 40-pound regular mono. So I've actually kind of converted. I was totally anti-fluoro for a long time, but now I use it.
Okay, and just to bring maybe the audience that might not be up to speed on this, if you take a fluorocarbon leader and you want to know, well, what makes it so great, is that the refractive index is nearly identical to that of water. It's harder for fish to see, basically. Plus, you get say a 40-pound fluorocarbon leader and a 40-pound mono leader. The fluorocarbon has a much smaller diameter. You could almost cheat the system there. It's a little bit less noticeable
and stiffer.
diameter.
It's more abrasive. Yeah.
Right, and more abrasion resistant as well. And Mike, just shifting gears to your part of the world, you play living heck on the redfish and the snook in your part, and you do it in the occasional tarpon. Have you seen any differences between the mono versus fluorocarbon in the Tampa Bay in a system that may not be as clear the waters as the Florida Keys?
No, since I've started fishing, I couldn't tell you no difference.
Okay.
I buy whichever's on sale, honestly. From where I fish at, I've never, if I use mono, I use fluoro, I've had the same successful day or whatever. It's hard for me to fathom that, a snook or a redfish is gonna run up to a bait and say, I ain't biting that because it's fluoro or mono. I think it's all the same. Moto is moto to me,
You're right, brother. That's $33 for that one little spool
Yeah,
of fluoro.
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to check. Every time
Right?
before I go to tackle shop, I check how much.
Well, I bottom fish,
fluoro
imagine
is
this.
a fluoro or mono.
Yeah.
All right, I bottom fish, guys, so imagine me pulling out 30 feet of 40-pound fluoro, and I only got 3 times to do that on a spool for $30.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
However, just what you said, Jim, it is tougher, it's smaller, it's stiffer, and I really believe that that it increases your bites.
You had mentioned the price. That was the main deterrent for fluorocarbon. So the other deterrent, and to a certain extent, it has a lot of memory compared to a monofilament. You take it off the spool, there's a lot of coils, and because it has a hard outer shell, sometimes it's harder to work with. Now, Suffolk's fluorocarbon, they have a new one called Advanced. It's the same property as fluorocarbon, but it's much more subtle, less memory in it. It's a lot easier to work and tie, sort of almost like a monofilament, but with the fluorocarbon properties. And I've been using that for the past couple seasons, and it's been a very good thing to work with. Dan, real quickly, you're a bottom fishing authority. In the 30 seconds we have before we go to commercial break, braid versus monofilament fishing line on the actual reel for bottom fishing, braid or mono?
Well, I love braid, okay, but I always put at least 100 or 150 feet of mono on it. I want the stretch when I'm fighting a fish so that I do not pull the hooks out of that fish, because your braid will not stretch and you will pull hooks.
So you're going against the grain and putting that top shot
I
on
always
for that
put a
stretch.
top shot on it, and I learned it from bill fishing. You know?
Sure. Well, hold that thought. We're going to get back into it right after this commercial break. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, Successful Light Tackle Fishing as a Panel. We're coming right back.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by SIMRAD. Go with SIMRAD and go with confidence. Penn, let the battle begin. Sirius XM Marine, weather, fish mapping, and entertainment for anglers. Mercury Outboards, go boldly. ENGEL, portable fridge freezers and high-performance coolers. George will be right back. Welcome back to the 35th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
We're back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. Successful light tackle fishing is the topic. I'm talking with Captain Dan Kipnis, who is the bottom fishing authority. And you threw a little bit of a surprise in that we've all gone in that braid for the bottom fishing because, again, small diameter, less stretch. You could set the hook really good, 200 feet down.
But if you're bottom fishing, George, in federal waters, you got to use a circle hook if you're
Sure.
strictly bottom fishing. So you're not setting the hook.
Well, that's the same thing, though. When that fish moves off, you let the rod do it.
I
less
love
stretch,
that
jams
little
it
bit
more.
of stretch that you get there.
See, that's good. So you go with a mono top shot for bottom fishing.
Absolutely, but I learned that, as I said before the break, bill fishing, you know.
Okay.
A bill fisherman is going to put the braid below their top shot. The top shots there are 100 yards long.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so you don't break off a fish that's running fast, that's jumping, that's jerking its head, you know. It gives you that stretch, and I still think that's really
But
important.
how do you, to play devil's advocate with you, is you get a big bottom fish on, you're on a wreck 180, 200 feet down, and you're trying to turn from the wreck, and you have that stretch. Can that be a deterrent, give enough stretch to that fish to get you down there?
It could, but I firmly believe in hurting that fish as soon as I hook it. I want to keep his head up and his tail down. I don't want to let him go anywhere. I'd rather break the fish off than have him break me off in the wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's live or die by it.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's my theory.
You two gentlemen here, go ahead. You were going to
I like it, Jim?
I like
Right? It's like a snook up in the mangroves, man. You got one shot.
Yeah. All right, well, yeah, most of my fish are hooked within 30, 40, 50 feet of the boat. So on my small rods, I'm all braided line. You feel the bite better, you feel the bait hit the bottom better, you can set the hook better. But I'm close, he's talking far away.
Well, you know, I fish straight braid too. When I'm bass fishing, when I'm inshore fishing, backcountry, it's straight braid with a leader. It's different.
No, braid, I mean, I'm all braid on the little rods. And I tell people, like, sometimes we're in a redfish blitz, you know, where you're catching 10 or 20 in a row, and all of a sudden a fish comes in quickly, you know, and a guy wondered, what the hell happened? I said, well, let me tell you something. That braided line is so sensitive, sometimes a fish can sense a good angler, and he just gives up. And then that guy's a hero, brother.
Yeah, buddy, I like
Mike,
that.
you got to counter that
Yeah, I
somehow.
mean, it is. I agree with them because I tell my clients, you know, I see some of them sitting there and they keep their finger on the line like they about to shoot a gun or something. I'm like, what are you doing? I said, just take your finger away. I said, this braid and rod and everything is so sensitive. If a fish fart by, you'll be able to feel it. So you don't need to be, I don't know if you do that, like they hold the line.
Oh, I told him, wrap it around your finger a couple times.
Yeah, right. Cut it right off. That's for sure. You know.
All right, what are the big mistakes? You let me know if you gentlemen agree with this or you don't. With the light tackle fishing scenario, and it could apply to big game as well, sometimes anglers show up with like too large of a hook for the task at hand.
Yes.
Mike,
all the time.
you take this one.
That's the biggest mistake I see most anglers make. They'll show up on my boat. Sometimes they want to bring their own equipment. They'll
Is that a
step
kiss
on.
of death?
They'll step on the boat and they got 50-pound braid, 40-pound leader, 5-aught hook to catch a snook or a redfish. I'm like, dude, sometimes bigger ain't better.
Okay.
Thank God. Sometimes bigger ain't better.
Most of your live baiting is you're throwing live baits. What size hook are you using across the board for your tarpon, snook, redfish? What
I
is it?
use a 1-aught hook across the board.
A 1-aught?
1-aught hook
That's small.
across the board. I don't. Sometimes, actually, when I'm fishing for triple tail, I might go up to a 2 or 3. But a 1-aught is basically what I keep
Really?
on my boat. That's it.
That's tiny.
You know, George, it's so much easier to get a 1 or 2 hook into a fish's mouth and hook them, especially light tackle fishing. I fish 4, 6, and 8 pound tests for billfish, and I'm using the smallest little teeny circle hook I can get. A little thing, all right? You can't sit there and jerk on it, especially if you're using light line. I mean,
yeah, and we trying to get it to look as natural as it can, and scaling down is the way. I use 10-pound braid throughout my boat.
Yeah.
People think 10 pound. I'm like, if you know how to play the fish right, you could catch them on 3-pound braid if you know what you're doing.
Well, if we go back to a couple months back, we were fishing together, and on a 10-pound test braid outfit happened to be mine. You hooked this tarpon that you wasted about an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm 15. I got 15.
The hook sets. I know we have circle hooks involved. I know there's lures, there's regular J hooks. A lot of people into the sport, especially light tackle, make the mistake of improperly setting the hook. So I'm going to come back to you gentlemen right after the commercial break, and we're going to delve right into that. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the International Game Fish Association. We're coming right back after the commercial break.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Rapala, your best shot at a world record. Suffix, always use the best line. VMC, your expert in hooks. Williamson Lures for the pelagic playground. Starbright, blending technology with performance since 1973. George will be right back. Welcome back to the 35th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
We're back with the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the International Game Fish Association. The topic, successful light tackle fishing. We're coming back now to the proper way to set a hook, whether it's on an artificial circle hook, J hook. And Jim, let's go back in the backcountry behind Islamorada. You mentioned your 15-pound braid mostly on your outfits. If you're pitching live baits or even lures, what is a successful way to set a hook?
I tell people 2 things.
Yeah.
Number one, no Jimmy Houstons, okay? No freaking bass hook sets, okay? And number 2 is crank before you yank.
Right.
Yeah.
If you tell them that like 15, 20 times, they get it, maybe.
And I'm going to elaborate quickly here before we go down the line and get these opinions. The same with the artificial. When people see a tarpon or a snook blow up on the top water, let the fish, you whine. Let the fish get a good grip and
wait until the line's coming off the reel and then set the hook.
And
it's
I
like
subscribe to that whether I'm drifting natural baits or I'm fishing bottom fishing baits with circle. You let the rod bend and you wind and you come away with it so much more. Just sort of calm down your anxiety.
It's almost a circle hook technique with regular hooks. It's kind of what
Mike, you want to elaborate on hook sets?
And I show them, if you ever take a circle hook and I show them and I'm like, once you jerk real hard, that hook turns. And it is either going to go back into the bait or it's going to hook wrong in the fish and it's going to come out. So I just let them have it. And in my boat, pretty much, I let the people hold the rods at the beginning of the trip so they could feel like they're fishing. And then I'll just tell them, look, if you really want to catch fish, just put it in the rod holder and let the boat set the hook. Yeah. Let that fish hook himself.
Unbelievable. On circle hooks, man, that is,
Rodney is don't touch it.
Don't touch it.
and then people say, man, every time I go to get a drink or eat, I put my rod down and catch a fish. Right. I'm like, you know why? Because you ain't moving it and the boat sets the hook.
Dan, we talked, when, in your opinion, should an angler jump and go chase a fish?
All right, I personally, I said before, I'm using 6-pound test or 8-pound test, billfish, and other fish. I love fishing light line. The older I get, the lighter my line gets. Okay, I can't handle the heavy stuff anymore. I want to be on top of that fish as fast as I can get there. I'm going to put that boat on top of that fish, okay, and fight them close. There's another thing too. A lot of times on these fish, they jump or they'll come up. A tarpon comes up to breathe air. You can actually catch a big tarpon when it comes up to breathe if you can lip them, gaff them in the mouth, whatever you're going to do, and you get that fish. The biggest tarpon I ever caught was on a fly rod. It was about 170 pounds in government cut. There's no way in 45 feet of water you're going to get that fish. An hour later, it came up to breathe, and we grabbed it with a gloved hand right in the mouth. We had the boat right next to it when it came up.
See, I don't believe in putting the boat near the fish. So I stay power pole down, and I just let him run. I don't care if he's about to get spooled. I never go chase the fish. That
Well,
way
you don't want to use the fuel, Mike?
that, and if it gets off, I can always say it was a trophy fish. You know,
Oh, man.
I can always say, man, that was a fish of a lifetime. That was the biggest redfish, and it could be a stingray or whatever.
Yeah, but
it's the
you gotta
biggest
chase
redfish
fish.
ever.
Anyone who refish on the hook are wreck fishes, and they've got what I call the cocktail anchor. It's like a hood ornament, a 1949 Ford, the big chrome anchor and my anchor, I had that, I just keep there for looks. I got old school anchor. This way, with a float, if we got to chase a big cobia or whatever, I throw the old school anchor line with the float. We race after our fish. We get the fish. We come back up to where that float is, where our anchor is. You cannot do that with those cocktail anchors. You just lower it net because you can't break free
Right.
fast.
That's
And we're
right.
going to break to a commercial break and come right back to this discussion. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the International Game Fish Association. We'll be right back.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. Stay cool and protected while fishing. JL Audio, ahead of the curve. ACR, building survival products since 1956. Florida Keys and Key West. Visit flakeys.com. George will be right back. Welcome back to the 35th Annual Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, edition 2022, Successful Light Tackle Fishing. Now you've got your trophy fish near the boat. If you want to boat the fish, now you have to decide, you gaff, do you net? And let's start off with easy. I'm going to throw this one to the backcountry guys here. You've got a nice fish that you want to net. Netting sounds like it's a very easy routine to do. Jim, would you want to get a little pointers on what a person should do to net a fish and make sure you get it in the first shot?
Well, the most important thing, unless you're in a tournament, you don't want to try and net it when it's too green. You don't want to show the net to the fish. You got to get the fish's head up, and the bigger the fish, a lot of times you'll get the fish in the net, and the angler is still cranking. He's working against you. You got to tell the angler, when I get the head of the fish in the net, you lower the rod tip, bro. We're going to be doing like you and Goodwine there on that. I think George was the angler. I think
Don't bring that up.
When somebody hooks a nice fish on a swimming plug or a topwater plug with trebles, and you're going to net this fish, now the ante really ramps up, because not only are you going to try to get that angler to lower the rod tip to get the head and net, but one of those trebles could snag on the net and keep only the head part of the fish. It flops, it gets
Like a
dehooked and
dehooker.
gone.
Another critical thing about netting fish, you have to leave the net in the biggest hatch under the most stuff possible. So you do not have the net out in the boat, okay? That'll hurt you. You won't even get a bite if you have the net out.
The best advice you could tell that angler at that point, and everybody in the boat, when the end stages is coming here, calm down.
Dude,
they
if we
freak
lose a
when they
big
see the
fish,
fish.
bro, I don't recover till we catch another one.
I know.
You know, but here's another thing about having a big fish next to the boat on light tackle. Don't fight them as hard as you were fighting them where you got stretching.
don't pull 'em.
Oh,
Don't
you
pull
gotta
'em.
be, that's where you gotta be real suave about it there and gentle, because nothing gives when you're only 3 feet away from the fish.
That's true.
Okay?
Very, very
Nothing
true.
gives.
Got a couple minutes left here, and I want to throw this one to you, Dan. Gaffing a fish too. We talked about netting, but the proper way to gaff a fish and get that basically in one shot is how?
Well, I always went over, shot for the head, behind the leader, over the top, with the gaff hook pointing down, and lead and go with the fish. But you got to wait. Most fish, kingfish and tunas and stuff, they'll make a circle. Okay. Now, gaffing a snapper that comes up with, blown up and he's floating on the surface, a whole different story. And you can net that one, all right? But leading these pelagics, you got to go with the fish and let it make that circle. And as it comes around and starts to go, I'm right-handed to my right, all right? That's when I come behind the leader, over the head in one shot. Again, you don't want them to see, like the net, you don't want the fish to see the gaff. They see it, they're going to take off. Mm-hmm. Now, with a wahoo, you want to keep the boat in gear, bring it up the side of the boat, going at the speed of the wahoo, and you would basically
I'm
do
getting
the same
seasick
thing.
just watching you do this.
Oh, please, Mike, I'm about to go fishing with you now, so you keep it in calm water. I don't want my
He's
captain
doing
getting
this and
sick,
doing that.
okay?
I'm like,
All right, with the 30 seconds we have left, I'm going to throw this one over to Mike. All right, when should an angler change the braid fishing line or the monofilament fishing line? It's always, You know, they all have the spin finishes. They're nice and shiny. When does it come time to change them? Mike, 30 seconds.
I change mine. I do the hand test. I'll grab it and pull on it. If it don't break, I don't care how bad it looks, you throw it back out because it costs too much.
I'm bringing my own tackle when I come over to Tampa to fish with you. I'm going to tell you that right now.
I do the pull test, but you know, you're supposed to change it out once it get any kind of fray, anything that make it look like it's compromised. You change it out, but on my boat, we pushing the limits, you know.
All right, and we'll push the limits, and we'll end this session on that note there from Mike Goodwine. I appreciate it, panelists. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA. Well, there you have it. This week's Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series presented by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Now, adhering to Seminar Series tradition, you still have an opportunity for a chance to maybe win one of the many door prizes we have available. Go to nationalseminarseries.com, log on to the door prize banner, and enter your name and contact information. At the conclusion of the seminar series, we will computer generate the winners of those prizes. So get right down to it.